Other than superstars like Tom Cruise, Katie Holmes, and John Travolta, not a lot is known about the Scientology religion. But there does exist a tie to Guam, believe it or not, which is being featured during Chamorro Month by way of a rare photo exhibit entitled Guam 1926 to 1928, the L. Ron Hubbard Collection. While living on Guam back in 1927, the young red-haired Ron Hubbard, son of a naval lieutenant, learned to take photographs and actually taught a class of young Chamorros. After which, Hubbard compiled all he learned and observed about Guam in a study he referred to as an important part of his discovery in 1939 of the common denominator of life, survival. The L. Ron Hubbard photo exhibit of Guam opens at Kaha's satellite location at the Chamorro Village this Friday, March 2nd. Here with more details is L. Ron Hubbard's Public Relations Officer, Alexandra Kutuzov. Alexandra is joined by Sharon Runyon. She is the president of the Friends of L. Ron Hubbard Foundation in New York. During this interview, we'll also be showing some of the actual photos featured in the exhibit, so make sure you pay attention to that. Now, ladies, thank you very much for traveling all this way and bringing this wonderful, rare exhibit to Guam. Kudos to you and your efforts. Tell us about the exhibit itself and how it came to Guam.
Okay, well, the exhibit, there was a project researching here last November with these photos from pre-war Guam in 1927. And we were looking for people to interview that knew Ron Hubbard from that time period or knew the history of those photos. And there was such an interest in those photographs that we decided, well, we'll bring an exhibit here so that people can see the cultural value of the photos of that time and actually share or give back part of that history to them.
Oh, fantastic. And I'm glad you mentioned the value so that our viewers can better value such an exhibit. How long in total did it take the foundation to produce this exhibit?
Well, we've been doing a lot of different exhibits probably for the last 10 years. But the thing that's really unique about this one is, you know, there aren't a lot of photos from this time period of Guam, you know, due to World War II disasters.
We have so many natural disasters.
That's right.
Typhoons, you name it.
Right. So the personal photos, someone actually has to think ahead and send them off the island, or they're gone. So that's what's really neat about this. And although they've been taken by a 16-year-old, you get, and they're not snapshots, they're not tourist photos, they're a real insight into the people and you see a real affinity, a real love for the culture and for the beauty of the island. And frankly, he learned to take photos here because he was working at Mayhew's photographic studio right in Agana. So you have that whole aspect of the exhibit. It makes it kind of unique and very special for Guam.
So therein lies his interest and passion in photography. Now, one of those identified in the photos so far is 88-year-old Francisco Frank Sablon, who is living today in California. Frank distinctly remembers being photographed because Hubbard was his actual teacher. Tell us about that experience and what he shared with you folks.
Well, that was kind of a cute story because here's this 80-year-old and he's like, oh, there I am. And the photo's neat because it's not the whole sign, you know, everybody's standing up real nice in line. It's kind of a friendly photo where all the kids are kind of getting in place. So it's neat in that regard. And Frank is looking over and he said that his cousin was yelling at him to make sure that he had his shoes on because the kids didn't wear their shoes to school and they all had to wear their shoes that day. So he was making sure he had his shoes on.
Now, I also read that Hubbard took photos his entire life. The L. Ron Hubbard Library has a collection of over 40,000 images, including those from his early life when he traveled over 250,000 miles before his 19th birthday. Explain why it's so important that people here on Guam, you know, I want to say the elderly especially, but tell us why it's so important to go and see this exhibit.
Well, with this exhibit, as we said, they're rare photos from a time period that there is no history resulting. But this is also a time period where the young Ron Hubbard started to take an interest in different cultures, and what he learnt of the people here stayed with him for a long time, and that was a base of his research in later years. And then he travelled through Asia after that, but then he came back to Guam, and it was always he loved this place and he loved the people, and you can see that in the photographs. And if you come down to the exhibit, you can actually see the warmth of the people. You know, as we've been here, I've been here about a week or so, and the generosity and the welcoming of the people is also evident in these photographs from 1927. So it's historical. It also gives a window of the cultural background that you don't see very often in photographs or, you know, any type of material that exists.